You started the moment the cartridges hit the frost. 3 men on a Scottish hillside. 3 rifles emptying together. 3 brass casings spinning in the air and falling into heather that has gone suddenly, impossibly quiet. They have done exactly what every rule book says you do when a dangerous animal steps onto a private road. You don't shout. You don't run. You put your sights on the biggest part of it and you pull the trigger. The bullets hit. All 3 of them see that. The first slams into the thing's chest. The second takes it square in the ribs. The third hits so clean across the neck that, in any sane world, a spray of blood ought to fog the air. Instead, they hear something that sounds wrong even before their brains name it. Not the wet crack of meat and bone. A dull canvas-on-canvas thud, and a second later. 6 feet behind the animal. 3 dark shapes dropping into the snow with a soft hiss. Their own bullets. Smoldering, spent, lying in the frost as if they had fallen out of the beast rather than into it. The thing on the road, big as a pony, black as spilled ink, shakes once like a dog coming in out of rain. Then it opens its mouth. What comes out is not a roar. It's closer to a laugh. If the story ended there, with 3 keepers firing, a dog shaking off lead, and everyone writing it up as whatever it was, we killed it eventually, you would not be hearing this. You're now at clearance level 1 on case file 1908 SC03, held for decades in a locked drawer in a Highland estate office and half remembered over peat fires. Level 1 is what the Laird was told he could afford to believe. It's the clean version. Dead sheep. Nervous shepherds. A very large black dog-like animal seen on the Laird's road. Bullets that appeared to have little effect. On paper, that's all. If you stop here, you can tell yourself this was just a story about bad aim and a big stray. If you keep watching, you're accepting the next 2 levels. Level 2, the keeper's own depositions, never meant to leave the glen. Level 3, the patterns that connect that winter's hellhound to older roads, older debts, and to places you might already have walked at night without realizing what else uses that path. You can click away now, back to safer monsters. Or you can follow the men of Balnellen up onto the moor and stand where they stood when the first sheep was found with its spine twisted like a rope. Just remember, once you've gone past level 1, you don't get to be just a viewer anymore. You're part of the patrol. Level 1 begins Balnellen Estate, January 1908. In 1908, Balnellen Estate was supposed to be a managed kind of wild. A gray stone lodge crouched beside a black loch in Inverness Shire. Chimneys leaned in the wind, windows glowing for a few months a year when the Laird came north to shoot stags and grouse. On the maps in Sir Alastair Forbes' London study, Balnellen looked simple. A block of heather moor and birch scrub stretching from a lower strath up into the high ground of Càrn na Sìthe, the hill of the fairies, though no one used that name when the Laird was listening. The work of keeping that rectangle of land profitable and respectable belonged to 2 men. Sir Alastair himself on paper. His factor, Edward Blackwood, in practice. Blackwood was the kind of man estates breed when money has to cross long distances. Tight-lipped, narrow-shouldered, his pencil as sharp as his eye for an unpaid rent. Below them were the people who actually touched the land. 4 keepers. Angus Macri, head gamekeeper, mid-40s, born on the estate, lean as a stag, face tanned to leather by years on the hill. Robert Rab Muir, underkeeper, 26, a Glaswegian who had come north for work and stayed for reasons he could not quite explain. Donald Fraser, older, in charge of the ponies and lower beats. Ian Campbell, 19, newly hired, trying hard not to show how much of the moor still frightened him. And above them all, a piece of track that did not belong to any of them. The Laird's Road. It ran from the lodge up through the birch, over the first rise, and then out across the open moor to a shooting hut near Càrn na Sìthe. In autumn it saw ponies and gentlemen and laughing parties of guns. In winter it saw very little at all. Which is why, when people started dying around it, the Laird's office took notice. Not people at first. Sìthe. The first carcasses. On 10 January 1908, Shepherd Callum Ross came down from his high shieling looking older than he had 3 days before. He did not send a boy with a message. He did not wait to bump into Angus by chance. He went straight to the kennels behind the lodge and found the head keeper himself, brushing ice out of a retriever's coat. "There's something wrong up by the cairn," Ross said, "on my upper march." Angus didn't look up from the dog. "Foxes?" he asked. "You've plenty of those, Callum, that's why I give you cartridges." Oss shook his head. "Not a fox," he said. "Not any beast we've got business having, you'll need to see. If you've spent any time around working men, you know their tone changes long before their words do." Angus wiped his hands, hung the brush, and fetched his pony without further argument. The two men rode up into the high ground. The air thinned. Snow, which had lain in dirty strips along the track near the lodge, settled into deeper patches between hummocks. The wind bit harder. The first ewe lay in a shallow dip near a frozen burn. At a glance, it could have been an ordinary kill, white wool stained red, head at a wrong angle. Then Angus dismounted and crouched. "Christ," he murmured. Wolves had been gone from that part of Scotland for 60 years, but Angus knew their signatures from old stories and old skulls. This wasn't it. The ewe's neck was snapped. Not chewed, not ragged. Snapped with a clean rotation that had crushed vertebrae like chalk. Her back bent almost double, spine a broken bow. Her belly had been open, but not in the messy, tearing way of foxes or dogs. The ribs looked as if something had crushed them inward, then picked small bones free with careful, almost delicate bites. "What you don't see is the worst of it," Ross said. He pointed at the ground around the carcass. Snow had been broken and churned. The heather was mashed flat in a circle 6 or 7 feet across. But there were no clean prints. No pads, no claws, no hooves. Only the marks of Ross's own boots and the pony, and here and there, 4 long gouges in the frozen turf, as if something with 2 long toes had clawed down, then away, without leaving the shape of a foot behind. "Could be a pack of lurchers," Angus said, more out of habit than conviction. "Some bastard slipped them after the mart got a taste for mutton." Ross shook his head. "I've seen dogs at it," he said. "They're fools. They run the poor beasts half the glen and never clean one up before they're at the next. This," he gestured at the ewe, "this is tidy, fast. 1 broken, 2 eaten, 1 half left, and no sign where it went in or out. They found 2 more ewes within 50 yards. Same story. Same snapped necks, same crushed ribs, same circle of disturbed snow with nothing more than suggestion of claw marks." By the time they rode back down, Angus had the shape of the problem. It wasn't just that something was killing sheep. It was killing them in a way that made no sense with any animal he knew. That mattered for the balance of the hill and for the fragile balance between laird, shepherds, and keepers. If he called it fox and it turned out to be dogs, the shepherds would say the lodge cared more about sport than their flocks. If he called it dogs and it turned out to be poachers, things would get uglier. If he called it what the old people already whispered, he risked his job. That evening in the estate journal, Factor Blackwood wrote, 12 Jan. Macri reports 3 ewes taken on Upper Hill in unusual manner. No ordinary canine treading. Will investigate further. Not to be mentioned to Sir A until we have facts. Level 1 leaves out the part where, as they walked away from the carcasses, Ross said quietly, Up there by the cairn, my grandfather used to say he saw the black dog on bad nights. I never paid it heed. Maybe I should have." Angus didn't answer. Not because he agreed or disagreed. Because Balnilin ran on money and meat, not on stories, and saying the wrong name out loud felt like opening a gate with no clear idea what was on the other side. The first kennel death. Sheep die all the time. Estate business only really began to tilt when something touched the lodge itself. 4 days after that first call out, one of Sir Alistair's own deerhounds, a tall grey brute called Bran, failed to come in when whistled. The kennel lads searched the usual runs. They found him at dusk in a hollow halfway up the lower moor, on the lodge side of the Laird's road. He was lying on his side. From a distance, in the uncertain light of a winter afternoon, he looked asleep. Up close the wrongness showed. His neck had been broken. Neatly. No tearing. No puncture. Just finished. A spine that had been working 5 minutes earlier, now bent at an angle no living bones make. His eyes were open. The snow around him told almost nothing. No blood. No prints besides the faint scuff of his own big paws leading in, and the deeper dents where the lad's boots had circled him. "Did he hit the dike?" Blackwood asked when Angus brought him to see. "You'd hear it half the glen away," Angus said, "and the wall'd be down." Blackwood pinched the bridge of his nose. "Hounds are not cheap," he said, "nor easily replaced. I will have to account for this. Found with neck broken in mysterious fashion is not the sort of entry I relish putting in the kennel book." "What would you prefer?" Angus asked. "That he took a sudden slike to his own spine." Blackwood didn't appreciate the humor. That night in the journal he wrote, 16 Jan. One of Sir A's hounds, Bran, found dead on Lower Cairn, neck broken. No apparent signs of struggle or dog fight. Macri unsettled. Will keep eye on further stock losses. He did not show that entry to Sir Alistair in his next London letter. Estate factors, like good editors, decide what their patron can bear to know. But secrets don't stay up at the big house. Down in the cottages along the lower strath, the shepherds already knew by morning. So the lodge's dog, been up talking to the black one as well then, an old woman said, cracking peat for the fire. "How do you make that out?" her daughter asked. "He's dead, isn't he?" the old woman replied. "The patrol is born." After the third sheep, the dead hound, and a hill pony found with ribs bruised as if something had sat on it, Blackwood ran out of room to keep the Laird out of it. He sent a blunt telegram to London. "Unusual predator Moor stop sheep, and deerhound killed stop tracks, and wounds not normal fox or dog stop gamekeepers. Report very large black dog Laird's road stop, request instructions stop." Sir Alistair's answer came back on thin paper the next day. "Increase patrols night and day stop, consult local police, sergeant discreetly stop, no press stop, ALASTAIR, FORBES. No press, no panic. Balnilin would handle its monsters in-house." So Blackwood called Angus into the study, drew the curtain to shut out the view of the moor, and said, "I don't care what song the old women put to it. You will not use the word hellhound anywhere I might have to read it, but you will, from tonight, have men on that road whenever it's dark until we know what is there." "What sort of men?" Angus asked. "The sort who can shoot straight and keep their heads," Blackwood said. "You Muir the lad Campbell, take your Enfields, your martini, your shotgun. If it is an animal, you will kill it. If it is some bastard's dog, you will kill that too, and I will deal with the owner." "And if it is neither?" Angus asked carefully. "Then you will call it something else and kill it anyway," Blackwood said, ending the discussion. That conversation makes it into the papers in only one place, a cool line in Blackwood's journal. 19 Jan. ordered night patrols on Laird's road to locate and destroy offending animal. Macri reluctant to name, but agreed. Must be resolved before Sir A's spring visit. From the Laird's point of view, that was the whole of Level 1. A problem in animal a patrol. The first night on the hill, they saw nothing. They lay in the heather by the dike, see their breath, hear their own muscles complain, listen to the ordinary noises of an exposed landscape. Wind in grasses, distant bark of a stag fox squabbling somewhere out of sight. The road shone faintly between snow patches. No heavy footsteps padded up it. Ian went home so cold his teeth wouldn't stop knocking. Rab complained about wasted cartridges. Angus told Blackwood, "Nothing tonight," and both pretended to be relieved. The second night, the estate crossed a line it couldn't uncross. Very large black dog-like animal. On 20 January, in a hollow halfway up the Laird's road, with the lodge's windows a handful of yellow squares below, and the hill's dark bulk above, Angus, Rab, and Ian heard the thing coming. They described it in their first statements as a pacing. Like a horse walking without shoes, Ian said, but heavier, slower, like the sound came up through the ground more than along it. They could feel it in their ribs before it was loud enough to name. Pad, pad. From the lodge side, up the road. That's it, Rab breathed. Wait until you see eyes, Angus whispered. Then we fire. The Moor held its breath. The sound reached the bend, a shallow curve in the road where, by all rights, anything coming up from below should appear against the pale strip. For 2 long seconds, the space was empty. Then the dog existed. There is no better way to put it at Level 1. It did not loom slowly into view. It did not rise from heather. One heartbeat, there was an absence. The next, there was a shape where absence had been. A dog in outline. Huge. Shoulder high to a man's chest. Coat black enough to make the night around it look gray. Head heavy. Ears hanging close, but not quite like any breed recognizable from kennel books. Eyes. Even the official deposition uses the word glowing, though Kincaid, the police sergeant recording it, underlines it and adds a small skeptical question mark. They glowed. Not in the lurid red of penny dreadful illustrations, but in a cold yellow like paraffin lamps turned down low. Their own light, not entirely reliant on what the sky was doing. The beast walked up the middle of the road, as if it owned the way. When it came level with the hollow, it stopped. It turned its head. It looked directly at the 3 men lying in the frost. Even in Kincaid's cleaned-up version, this detail comes through. It did not show surprise. It showed recognition, as if it had expected exactly this. Angus hissed now. 3 rifles fired. The Laird's Lee Enfield, Rab's old Martini Henry, Ian's 12 bore. The reports cracked off the hill and went rolling down into the strath. Their shots were good. Even in the written statements, with all the self-protecting qualifiers men use when talking to authority, this part stays clear. I am certain my rifle shot struck the animal in the chest at less than 30 yards. Macri. My Martini round hit forward of the shoulder. Moor. I saw the pattern of shot go straight into its side. Campbell. In any normal world, that would be that. Here is the line where Level 1 changes color. The bullets hit. The beast flinched. And then official phrase, appeared unaffected. The depositions do not dwell on the details. They say things like, no blood was observed, and the animal made no sound indicating distress. They do not, at Level 1, mention watching the slugs tumble out of its outline and land on the road like spent stones. But if you read between those lines, you can hear what they did not feel comfortable saying under oath. You already saw it in the cold open. You are not under oath. You can imagine it clearly. The sergeant sanitized paragraph. Sergeant Hugh Kincaid did his job. He took 3 separate statements from 3 very shaken men the next morning at the estate office, pencil scratching. He asked the right questions. Distance. Type of weapon. Any evidence of ricochet off rock. Any tracks. Then he rode the road himself, in daylight. He saw the gouged ruts where hooves and cartwheels had worn the track over years. He saw the small, dark pits in the road surface that looked, uncomfortably, like impacts. He saw no blood. In his official report to the sheriff, he wrote, "I am bound to state that, in my opinion, some form of large dog or dog-like animal is abroad on the Balnell and Moor. Witnesses describe it as of extraordinary size and black in color. All agree that rifle fire at moderate range did not appear to cause visible injury. I myself observed no blood or clear prints beyond ordinary disturbance of the frost. I cannot rule out excited misperception, but given the number and character of those reporting, I recommend increased caution on the upper road during darkness." That's where level 1 ends. At an animal that did not appear to take bullets, and a sergeant politely recommending people not walk that way at night. If you stayed at level 1, you could close this file with a shrug. Big dog. Bad story. Men spooked. But level 1 is the part the estate could live with. Level 2 is the part they couldn't afford to write down in full. It's the words that didn't make it into Kincaid's report. It's the way the hounds reacted. The way the chain burned. The way the thing chose who to push and who to ignore. If that first patrol had been the worst of it, Blackwood's journal would have one odd week in it and nothing more. It doesn't. Because the beast came back. Because the men tried heavier rifles and closer shots. Because the dog, whatever it was, stepped off the road and into their hollow and put its weight on a 19-year-old keeper's chest like someone testing how much a bone will give. You're about to see those details. That's clearance level 2. If you want to keep believing this was just an unusual predator, stop here. If you don't, reply in your own head, the way Angus answered Blackwood. We'll sit on the hill and see what really walks. And then follow them up into the heather, where the Laird's African buffalo rifle hit something that was not flesh, and iron links glowed orange against fur that didn't quite belong to this side of the moor. You've seen the version they could admit to on paper. Now you're moving into the part of the file that lived in men's hands and throats, not in ledgers. Clearance level 2 is where the patrol's own words live. The pages with dirt on them. The ink that blotted when a hand shook. The half-sentenced lines that stop when a man doesn't want to write the rest. At this level, the rule changes. You don't get to stand in the lodge and hear what happened. You have to lie in the heather with them. The road refuses to go back to normal. The morning after that first encounter, Angus, Rab, and Ian came down off the hill pale and hollow-eyed. They handed their spent cartridges to the factor without being asked. Blackwood lined them up on his desk, 3 from the Enfield and the Martini, a mangled 12-bore shell. "What did you hit?" he asked. "Whatever was on the road," Angus said. "That's not an answer," Blackwood snapped. "It's the only one we have," Angus replied. He did not talk in that room about watching Ian stoop later and pick up a misshapen slug from the frozen mud 2 yards behind where the dog had stood. He saved that for the small, crowded keeper's hut that night, when the fire had burned low and the air between them was thick with peat smoke and secrets. "It's like the hill spat it back," Ian said, turning the piece of lead between his fingers. "As if there's a thin skin round that damned thing, and it throws anything out that tries to stay in." Rab stared at it. "How do you kill something the land doesn't want to keep hold of?" he asked. Angus didn't answer. He tied the slug into a scrap of cloth and dropped it into his coat pocket like a talisman, a reminder that whatever they were dealing with liked playing with the rules. 2 nights later, the Laird's road claimed its first kennel death. They heard Dub, the last and bravest of the deerhounds, howling before they saw anything. Not the bay of a hound on scent, a drawn-out, strangled sound none of them had ever heard him make. By the time Angus and the kennel lad reached the lower slopes, the sound had already cut off. They found Fia, the big bitch, lying near a half-collapsed sheep shelter. Her neck was broken like Bran-s. Her body had not been eaten. It looked horribly as if something had picked her up, turned her, and set her down in the wrong shape. Dub trembled over her, lips peeled back, whole body vibrating with a mix of fear and fury. He would not let anyone touch the dead hound until Angus took his head in both hands and pressed his own brow to his. "It wasn't you," Angus whispered into his ear. "We know it wasn't you." He wasn't sure which of them he was trying to convince. After that, the other dogs wouldn't go near the upper road. At feed time, they paced the kennel yard, noses turned upwind, hair along their backs in a constant, uneasy ridge. "I've never seen them like this," the kennel lad told Rab, "not even in thunder." "They're smarter than we are," Rab said. Patrol 2, the second contact. Blackwood's order was simple: more men, more guns. He wanted this thing reduced to a carcass before Sir Alistair's spring party came north. He did not want young gentlemen and a London colonel hearing about ghouls on the grouse beats. So the second patrol went up heavier. Angus carried his .303 and a Webley revolver. Rab had the martini and a shotgun. Ian, though the others had suggested leaving him behind, refused. You hear that in his letter to his brother in Glasgow. "If I sat it out after seeing it once, I'd never walk the hill again. Better to go and be afraid with a gun than stay and be afraid with nothing." They also took something new. From the smithy below the lodge, Angus had borrowed a coil of thick iron chain, the kind normally used to hitch carts in bad weather. "Old folks say iron's no friend to the things that don't take kindly to kirk bells," he said when Rab asked. "We've thrown lead at it. Lead seems to pass right through. Let's see how it likes something colder." They settled into the same hollow. You are there with them now. The dike wall at your back is cold even through your coat. The chain is a heavy presence by your ankle, black against the rimed heather. Your rifle barrel is warmer where your gloved hand touches it. Everywhere else, the world is a numb ache. The night breathes. Around midnight, the breathing stops. That's the only way they could describe it later. Not that the wind died entirely, but that the noise of the land paused. No whisper of reed. No scrape of tussock. As if the moor itself were holding its lungs. Then again that low bone-felt pad came up the hill. The dog stepped into view on the bend. No build-up. No approach. It was simply there. Closer than before. Ian would later tell Kincaid, in a whisper the sergeant had to lean in to catch, that the second time what bothered him most was not the eyes or the size. It was the expression. "It looked like it was coming back to check something," he said. "Like as if we were on its route, not the other way round." They fired. Again. More shots, more muzzle flashes, more spent brass spinning and cooling in the frost. And again. Impacts. Jolts. Lead in the road. No blood. No stumble. The dog shook once, like something shedding raindrops that weren't there. Then instead of pacing past as it had before, it changed direction. It stepped toward the dike. And into the hollow. When it got close enough to touch. The first time, the distance between them and it had been just enough to pretend it was an animal. 20 yards of air and road can make almost anything look like it might be ordinary under the skin. The second time, It came in far enough to remove that comfort. It came over the low stone wall as if the stones weren't there. One easy bound. 300 weight of black shape, landing less than 10 feet away. At clearance level 2, you have to see it from the ground, not from Blackwood's window. The thing's shoulders roll under its coat. Up close, you see that fur isn't right. It's too flat. It doesn't catch moonlight properly. In some angles it looks more like smoke, painted onto muscle than hair. Its mouth opens. You can smell its breath. It isn't carrion stink or hot meat. It's dry, metallic, like coins on the tongue. Angus drags the chain between them and it, hands shaking. "Here then," he says under his breath, "try this." The dog moves. It doesn't lunge for the man in front. It lunges for the weakest of the three. Later, everyone says they knew it would. Predators pick targets. Whatever this was had been watching them long enough to learn who flinched hardest. It hits Ian full in the chest. He goes down. The world narrows to the weight on his ribs, and the shock, and the taste of iron at the back of his throat. He said later, in a deposition only partly coherent, "It felt like the hill fell on me, like my chest was a door and something big had leaned in to see if the lock would give." He does the only thing his hands can reach for. The chain. He flings it up blindly between his throat and the dog's teeth. Iron meets not quite flesh. The sound it makes is not an impact you recognize. Not bone. Not metal on metal. More like the shriek you get when you drag a frozen spade across stone. The links of the chain flicker orange. For an instant, they etch themselves into the silhouette of the beast like heated wire pressed into wax. The dog recoils. The movement is sharp, involuntary, nothing like its earlier disdain of bullets. The eyes flare, then dim as if something has cut across a current. Rab, seeing Ian half-crushed and the beast stumble, empties his revolver straight into its side. This time, one of the .455 rounds hits, just as its flank crosses the line between road and heather. For a split second, the dog's form wavers. What Rab swears he sees, and cannot later bring himself to write, is not just fur and muscle. It's a suggestion of something leaner inside the outline, a wrong-proportioned skeleton, longer in the jaw, narrower in the chest, crowding inside a hide that doesn't quite fit. Then the bullets leave again. Pitted slugs fall into the grass at an angle that says they came out, not in. The beast pulls away from the chain. It takes 2, 3 backward steps, all 4 paws on the packed earth of the road again. The moment its weight is back on the trodden track, the air around it steadies. The heather no longer drags its limbs. It shakes once, as if throwing off heat. Then, looking almost insulted, it stalks away up the road into the dark. Not chased. Not driven off. Just bored. Leaving 3 men in a hollow, a chain still smoking faintly, and the twisted hull of a dead hound in the heather. "Why didn't it finish me?" Ian asked that night in the hut, voice thin. "Because it decided not to," Angus said, and that was worse than any talk of mercy. The sergeant's unofficial notes. Sergeant Kincaid came up the next day because he had to. He walked the Laird's road with Angus, listened to the recounting, saw the bruises on Ian's chest, the chain blackened in one place as if something hot had run briefly through it. Officially, in the margin of his report, he wrote, "Keepers allege that contact with iron caused the animal some distress. Hard to substantiate, but worth noting given consistency of their accounts." Privately, in his own pocketbook, he allowed more. The fear in the boy's face is not the fear of someone who has seen a large dog. It is the fear of someone who has felt weight he cannot name on his own lungs. "I know of tales of black dogs and roads but have not previously given them credit. May have to allow that the old stories existed because of something people saw, not instead of it." Level 2 is full of these double entries, the officer's voice and the man's. One keeps his job. The other tries to sleep. WH. And the Laird steps into the file. Sir Alistair Forbes did not plan to spend his February dealing with a fairy dog. He had Parliament, clubs, dinners. He also had pride. When Blackwood's second, more urgent telegram reached him, mentioning hounds, chains, and phrases like bullets appeared to pass through with no wounding effect, he decided this was no longer something to be managed by letters. Have read your report with surprise stop coming north, with call BARRNGTON, and rifle stop. Do not exaggerate matter in hearing of staff stop ALASTAR. That last line tells you exactly how he thought of it. He arrived 3 days later with a London shooting friend, Colonel Arthur Barrington, and a gun case full of heavy rifles more used to the African veldt than the Scottish hill. Where Level 1 had tried to keep the Laird out of it, Level 2 puts him directly onto the road. You stand with him in the lodge gun room while Angus and the underkeepers wait by the door, caps in their hands. On the walls, stags' heads, faded tiger skins, a zebra hide now unfashionable, and in pride of place, a photograph of Sir Alistair Younger, grinning over a dead Cape buffalo, the big .450 Rigby balanced like a third arm. So, Sir Alistair says, tell me what sort of mongrel is chewing my stock and spitting at my keepers. Angus chooses each word. He talks about the sheep, the snapped spines, the lack of prints. He talks about Bran and Fia. He describes with as much restraint as he can the dog on the road, its height, its eyes, the way bullets hit and came out. He mentions the chain. When he finishes, there is a sound like paper being crushed. It's Blackwood's hand tightening on his journal. Barrington laughs, high and a little forced. You country men and your stories, he says. I've seen plenty in my time. Hyenas that wouldn't come down for hours after being hit. Crocs that took 3 shots and still wriggled. They all stopped squealing in the end. You just need enough lead in the right place. This isn't Africa, Angus says before he can stop himself. No, Sir Alistair agrees. It's my moor, which is why we're going to go up there and remove whatever thinks it owns my road. His plan is simple. It is also, by the logic of his world, reasonable. Place armed men at 2 points along the Laird's road. Use flankers to discourage the beast from leaving the track. Bring a good hound to scent and sound. When the dog comes, pour enough heavy lead into it that even a ghost loses its footing. If this were only a story about caliber, you could skip Level 3. But first, you have to watch Level 2 play out. You have to see what happens when all the hunter's advantages, position, weapon, experience, meet something that doesn't share his rules. The last drive from the hull. They pick 2 killing grounds. Angus and his men keep their familiar hollow by the dike. Sir Alistair and Barrington take the upper bend, where the road narrows between 2 rocks and anything walking must show itself broadside. Fraser and Donald move along the flanks, lanterns shaded, to keep something big from sliding off into the heather without being seen. Dub is given to Sir Alistair on a short leash. The dog does not like it. His tail is low, his body pressed close to Angus until the very last moment when the Laird jerks him away. You'll earn your biscuits tonight, Sir Alistair mutters. You go back to the hollow with Angus, Rab Ian. You already know how this feels. The heaviness of the chain at your knee, the knowledge of what happened last time, the way your own ears rival the wind in volume. Time tricks you. Every creak of bone, every shift of position feels too loud. Then Dub's bay comes down from above. Long, deep, wrong. Not fox, not deer. The sound of a dog telling anyone who understands dog that something is on its way that should not be. Angus flashes the lamp once up the road. A pale wink quickly shuddered. 2 blinks from above answer. They see it too. The next part of the file is written in different hands, but describes the same progress from 3 angles. From the hollow below, from the bend above, and much later, from the wider vantage of men trying to make sense of it. From below, Angus hears the pacing, feels it in his ribs, each pad a tiny shove against air. The black dog appears on the curve, walking toward them, closer than either previous time. He notices details his mind had edited out before. The way its body seems to stay the same size no matter how close it gets, as if the world behind it bends. The faint shimmer at the edge of its outline, like heat above stone. The way its paws leave no marks on frost that crunches under his own weight. He also notices what happens when it crosses the spot on the road where his earlier bullet had hit and dropped. For half a heartbeat, that patch of ground glows. Not with fire, with memory. The air there glitters, as if a thin crust of tea. Me had broken and let something brighter through. He doesn't tell the others that part. Even at level 2, some details stay in a man's own head. The dog comes level with the hollow. It looks at them, and it steps down. Again. Chain and rifle. Reflex and fear. Only this time, it isn't interested in testing them. It shifts weight as if truly deciding, for the first time, what to do with these noisy obstacles on its path. Then the Laird's first shot cracks down from above, and everything erupts. From above, Sir Alistair stands with his back to a rock, Dub straining at the lead. He sees the dog at 30 yards and cannot, for a few seconds, reconcile it with anything in any of his previous experience. It is too big. Its coat drinks too much light. Its eyes break every instinct he has about what animal eyes should do. He is not, to his credit, paralyzed. He shoulders the Rigby. Now, Barrington says beside him, their 2 heavy rifles aligning. They fire. From level 1, you know what that looked like. Big slugs hitting, chips flying from the rock behind. From level 2, you're close enough to catch the tiny, wrong details. The way one bullet seems to slow just before it touches the dog's chest, as if encountering a dense pocket of air. The way another emerges from the far side not as a slug, but as a cloud of darker motes, reforming on the rock. The way the dog's shadow does not quite follow its body. Dub rips loose. No man of them is quick enough to stop him. The hound, who would not walk up the road for anyone else, now chooses to do the most hound-like thing imaginable, attack the threat to his pack. Sir Alistair feels the lead slip from his fingers. He shouts, "It doesn't matter." Dub hits the black dog. From above, all they see is collision. From below, Angus and the others see what happens at the contact point. Dub's muzzle disappears too far into the beast's neck. The outline of his head elongates, jaw stretching, as if his skull is being drawn inward. His body goes rigid. Angus throws the chain again, before his mind has time to process it. The iron coils across both animals. The glow that explodes out where it hits is white-hot this time. Dub's body is thrown clear. The beast snarls, not in pain alone but in offense. The chain blackens under their eyes. None of their bullets have done that. The thing makes a choice. In any ordinary hunt, things escalate until something runs out of blood or courage. Here, the escalation only proves one thing. What walks the Laird's road can be irritated. It does not have to be afraid. After the chain and the second volley from the upper bend, the Hellhound has a decision to make. The file in its different hands all agree on this moment. The dog looks at them, and you can feel that something behind its eyes is choosing. It stands with one paw on the track, one in the heather. For that moment, the opposition between those places is visible. Where its weight sits on the road, the frost seems to hold it up. Where its weight sinks into the heather, the ground drags at it, blurring its edges. You can almost see a layer of the moor's reality saying, "You are less here." It does not like that. It steps all 4 feet back onto the road. You can feel in your own knees that some thin-walled pressure has been relieved. It is stronger there. It always has been. It takes 3 exact steps to the spot where, earlier, Dub had lunged. It lowers its head, inhales, as if filing away the scent of hound and man and iron. Then, with a contemptuous little flick of one claw, it sends the ruined chain skidding down the slope. "Get this off my road." It turns its back on all of them, Laird, Colonel, keepers, rifles, fear, and walks away up toward Càrn na Sìthe. The way you or I might walk the last few yards to our front door with arms full of shopping, too tired to bother with anyone yelling from halfway down the street. The patrol could have followed. They don't. They stand there, littering the track with expensive brass and one good dog's body, and realize with a kind of horrified clarity. This thing is not hunting them. They are just noise on its path. Level 2 fallout, men and paper. After that night, there were no more ambushes. No daring final stand, where Angus jammed the Rigby down its throat and pulled the triggers and walked away, bloodied but victorious. The file does not give you that satisfaction. Instead, it gives you this, in Blackwood's neat, shaking script. 15 Feb. Laird and Colby joined Moor patrol, encountered animal at Upper Bend, multiple shots from heavy rifles at very close range, no apparent effect, deerhound Dub killed in shocking fashion. Macri reports that leaving road for heather temporarily discomfited the creature, but it returned to road and retired at its own choosing. Sir A, deeply unsettled, has ordered suspension of all-night use of Laird's road until further notice. Matter Khan. Cidered closed for purposes of estate business. Considered closed for purposes of estate business. That's level 1 trying to crush level 2 back into a manageable shape. Down in the keeper's hut, the matter did not feel closed. Ian did not sleep properly for months. He woke with the pressure on his chest, the chain in his hands, the smell of coin breath in his nose. Rab avoided the upper road even in daylight, unless duty absolutely required it. Angus, who had spent his whole life walking that moor in all its moods, began cutting across rough ground, rather than put his boots on those 2 parallel ruts after sundown. In his own tiny notebook, he wrote, in a hand that didn't match his usual, "We thought we were hunting it. Truth is, we were standing in its stairwell with sticks, shouting at the tenants. We threw stones at a train. It was always going to go where it was going. Only question was whether we'd be under it." Sergeant Kincaid's last entry on the matter, never filed beyond his own drawer, reads, "Sheriff writes asking if we require further assistance from town Ray, so-called Hellhound affair. I have replied that local measures suffice. Truth is, I would not wish that road on any man I liked. Better to let it go back to whatever business it had before everyone started pointing guns at it. What still walks and who it walks for." By late spring, the killing stopped. No more broken-backed ewes. No more ponies lamed without cause. No more kennels waking to silence where a hound should be. People started to use the phrases "it's over," and "just a bad winter," and "things have gone back to normal." They hadn't. Not completely. On certain nights, clear, cold, the kind where frost furs the grass by midnight, people in the strath said they heard something on the hill. A slow, heavy pad that came up the Laird's road, past the old hollow, paused by the blackened rock at the bend, and went on toward the high ground. No one who still had any sense went out to see. The road, in other words, remembered. So did the thing that used it. And though it no longer seemed interested in snapping spines for emphasis, it may not have liked being made visible, being shot at, having its pattern exposed. That's where level 3 of this file lives. Not only in what attacked Balnillan, but in what Balnillan got in the way of. You've seen the estate's official nightmare and the keeper's close-range version. Level 3 is where we pull back to older maps of who used that track before the Laird ever came north, to other Black Dog reports that trace the same line, and to what all of that has to do with any road you might walk tonight that has been walked 1,000 times before you. If you want the story to stay a weird winter on one Scottish estate, you can step off here. If instead you want to know why old people talk about dogs on bridges, church paths, and estate roads as if they are all the same animal, and why iron and getting off the beaten track might matter more than any bullet, then you've already climbed too high in this file to go back easily. If level 1 was the estate's clean story, and level 2 was 3 men lying in the heather with a chain and a rifle, level 3 is where you stop asking, what was that thing? And start asking, why was it there at all? Because monsters don't just appear in one winter and vanish. They appear along patterns, along lines other people have been walking and dying on for a very long time. You're not sitting in the lodge anymore. You're not even just in the hollow. At level 3, you're standing on the whole map. And when you look down, you can see that the Laird's Road isn't just a track for ponies and sportsmen. It's sitting on top of something older. That does not care whose name is on the deeds. The road before the Laird. Long before anyone called that house Balnillan Lodge, long before Sir Alistair's line even existed, the upland between the loch and Càrn na Sìthe had another name in parish books. The Old Kirk Way. You find it first in a brittle marriage register from 1814, now half-eaten by damp. Down the margins, in an older, darker ink than the careful script of bands and names, someone has scribbled. N.B. Bodies from Upper Glen are still carried by the old way over Càrn to the kirk when weather permits. When too deep in snow, the lower way by the burn is used, though some do not like it. The archivist who catalogued this note in the 1960s adds a quiet footnote of her own. Local people refer to the Corpse Road crossing estate now called Balnillan, tradition that spirits follow same way long after burials cease. A corpse road. You might have heard the term. They were common across Britain, designated routes along which the dead of one settlement were carried to be buried in consecrated ground at another, often over moor, through bog, across boundaries. Paths beaten by long lines of men under coffins and women under grief. People believed that once a road had carried enough of that weight, something about it set. Not just in the soil, in whatever runs under the soil. The dead were thought to keep using those roads in their own fashion. And anything else that walked them, especially at night, joined the pattern whether it meant to or not. You can see already what that means. The Laird's Road wasn't just a convenient line on the hill. It was laid, with all a Victorian laird's oblivious confidence, on top of the old Kirk Way. The very line generations had used to carry their people to the church across the hill. When you know that, the description you heard at level 2 starts to look less like a one-off nightmare and more like a symptom. A big black dog that walks the same path again and again. Unaffected by bullets. Angered by iron. Strong on the road. Weaker when dragged into the heather. It's playing by rules far older than Sir Alistair's tenancy. Black dogs and boundaries. The Balnillan Hellhound is not the only black dog on record. Not by a long way. If you unseal enough drawers in enough vicarages, police stations, and local papers across Britain, you start hearing the same outlines repeated in different accents. Black Shuck on the roads of East Anglia. The Barghest on northern lanes. The Girt Dog of Somerset. The Sìthe in the Highlands, the fairy hound, as fast and silent as mist, whose appearance on a track is a sign that someone is about to die along it. Different names, same job. They appear at the ends of lanes leading to churches, on bridges, at gates between old estates and common land, at the turns of long drove roads where cattle used to be moved for days. Always on boundaries, always on paths that carry more than feet. The folklorists put it one way. Black dog apparitions are often associated with liminal places, crossroads, churchyards, ancient tracks, acting as guardians, omens, or personifications of the road itself. The keepers at Balnillan would put it another. The dog walks where the road walks. It doesn't come for you, you just happen to be in its way. What happened in 1908 fits those older patterns with almost uncomfortable neatness. You have a house newly rich enough to assert its right to a path that was not really new at all. A factor determined to show that his rifles beat old talk. A laird who treats the old kirk way like a private driveway. Men with guns planting themselves where a carrier of omens has been walking unnoticed for centuries. At level 1, it looks like an estate problem. At level 3, it looks like a collision between two hierarchies. The laird's idea of control, and the road's. The dog is not an intruder on Balnillan. Balnillan is an intruder on the dog's route. Why bullets didn't matter and iron did. The thing that bothered the keepers the most, more than the size or the eyes, was simple. The beast behaved as if the physics of its feedback were wired differently. Bullets entered, then appeared to leave without spending damage. The chain touched and something changed. This is where Evil 3 lets you stop thinking in terms of monster skin and start thinking in terms of systems. You've seen this pattern somewhere else, even if you don't realize it yet. A circuit that only cares about a certain kind of input. A door that opens to one key, not another. A lock that isn't about strength but type. In most of the old black dog lore, two details surface again and again. You've bumped into both already. Cold iron hurts it. Not steel, not lead, iron. The cheap, ugly, everyday metal of old plows, nails, and chains. The thing people used to ring church bells with and hang above doors. The path it uses is the path it owns. It walks certain routes at certain hours. It can appear elsewhere, but it is thin there, hazy at the edges. On its road, it's sharp, heavy, fully present. Balnillan's beast followed those rules so closely, you could write a manual from it. Iron chain, first real recoil. Step off the laird's road into the heather. Edges blur, paws drag, momentum stutters. Lead, brass, modern rifles, irritants, noise, the way midges are to you when you push through bracken. Annoying, not preventing. You can explain that purely in story terms. Roads are for spirits, iron is poison to the other crowd, or you can think of it as a kind of filter. Whatever this thing is, it operates best along lines of habit loaded with human meaning. It cares much more about whether you are reinforcing that habit by using the path the way it wants used than about what you fling through it. And iron in those older rules is the fast way to say no. It is crude negativity. A denial dropped into a system that wants everything to flow one way. When Ian flung that chain up between his throat and its teeth, he wasn't just hitting it with metal. He was, for a split second, breaking the channel. Telling the road in its own language, this pattern stops here. The road didn't like that. The dog liked it even less. So it shrugged the chain off its back, kicked it aside, and later deliberately walked on the track as if to prove that while iron might sting, it did not rewrite the path. On level 3, the image you're left with is not just a hellhound that wouldn't take bullets. It's a hellhound that takes roads, and a set of humans accidentally discovering exactly what language it does and doesn't understand. Other files, same shape. Balnilin is not the only case file in the Outland stacks with this structure. You see it in railway reports from the 1860s. A black dog seen pacing a new line the week before a collision. You see it in a police notebook from 1923. Large dark hound reported on church path 3 nights running before roof fall that killed verger. You see it in a 1950s motorway construction report, where workers digging through an old lane find a line of stones arranged in a dog's shape at the exact point where accidents keep clustering. Each time, someone with power has put their own new hierarchy down. A road, a rail, and a state boundary. Each time, the old path under it had different ideas. When something old walks on those layers, what you see depends on what you're trained to notice. Farmers see a warning. Clergy see a test. Landowners see a threat to property. On YouTube, you see an encounter thumbnail. But if you strip all that away, the behavior is consistent. It walks. It ignores what you fling at it if that's not part of its grammar. It occasionally takes something, an animal, a person, as a toll. It is more solid where humans have pushed the same route hardest. Which matters because you probably, without thinking, use such routes all the time. Corpse roads are old, but modern equivalents exist. Anywhere the ground has been taught to remember a pattern of motion. The path everyone takes across a housing estate instead of the official paving. The shortcut behind the supermarket no map shows, but every school kid knows. The track between car park and station that isn't a path on any sign, but is worn to dirt under 1,000 feet. Patterns, layered hierarchies, things that live on habit rather than on stone. If Balnilin had no other lesson, it would be this. Sometimes, when you stand in the middle of such a line and feel something looking at you from the dark, you are not imagining it. You are on someone else's staircase. Why you feel trapped in this story? At the start of this video, you were a viewer. By now you've climbed through 3 levels. Estate facts. Men in the hollow. The path under the path. You've been given enough detail that you can no longer flat what happened at Balnilin into weird dog story. You know, the Laird's Road was an old Kirk way. Black dogs show up again and again on such routes. Lead didn't matter. Iron did. Leaving the path made the thing weaker. Staying on it made you easier to reach. That is a hierarchy. You're inside it now. You can't really unknow that the next time you walk a long, narrow lane between houses at night and feel your shoulders tense for no good reason. The trap here isn't that the Hellhound might walk into your life tomorrow. It's that you now see the structure it was living in. And once you start noticing structures, you see them everywhere. You feel them on YouTube too. The way certain titles keep pulling you along the same recommendation routes. The way certain types of story, missing hikers, haunted ships, black dogs on roads, make you click just one more even when you meant to sleep. The way you end up on a channel like this, 3 files deep, and realize you've been following a pattern someone else laid down. At level 3, the Hellhound becomes less about teeth and more about feedback loops. The more you walk a path, in a Moor or in an algorithm, the more real it becomes for whatever feeds on such things. Balnilin's keepers proved you can throw iron into that loop and step off the track. They also proved that if you insist on standing square in the middle, shouting at whatever is coming up behind, you will be the first thing it tests its weight on. So what do you do with this? There are 3 takeaways from the Balnilin Hellhound file that matter outside 1908. You can treat them as folklore rules, or as retention architecture for your own life. Either way, if you've come this far, they're yours to carry. 1. Respect old roads. If a path has been used for centuries for a particular job, corpse carrying, processions, nightly patrols, it has a role. You can put tarmac on it, change its name, build a lodge beside it. It will still remember. If you walk such a road at the wrong time and feel like you are being watched, perhaps you are. The watcher may not care about you, but it cares where you're standing. You can choose in that moment to step off into the heather, figuratively or literally. Or you can stand your ground and find out why older minds called it a warning route. 2. Know what language the system speaks. Balnillin's men learned the hard way that bullets weren't the language that line understood. Iron and absence were. In other systems, social, digital, economic, the bullets we throw often aren't the things that shift anything. You can complain into a feed that is built on outrage and watch your complaints feed it. Or you can find the equivalent of iron for that system: silence, refusal, logging off at the point you would usually reply, and see what shakes. It's not about superstition. It's about recognizing that some patterns feed on reaction, not on force. 3. The deepest trap is knowing the shape. The Hellhound did not trap the men at Balnilin physically. It walked its route. They chose to sit on it. What traps you in this story isn't the beast. It's the structure you now see. Paths, layers, things that move along them whether you hope they exist or not. Once you see it, you can't really go back to believing every lane is just dirt, and every spooky dog story is just bad weather and whiskey. You've moved from clearance level 1 to level 3. You know more than the Laird ever admitted to knowing. That doesn't doom you. It obliges you to pay attention the next time you're walking somewhere you always walk, when a part of your body you don't usually listen to says, "Not this way, not tonight." Or when something in your life, an app, a road, a habit, feels less like a tool and more like a track you're not steering. You can do what Balnilin did at first, throw louder bullets at it. Or you can do what finally made a difference. Step off the track. Throw a different kind of metal into the loop. And accept that not every road with your name on it was actually laid for you. You started this file as someone looking at a thumbnail, Scottish Moor Hellhound Nightmare. You are not on that outside anymore. You've read the factor's clean lines, the sergeant's careful report, the young keeper's shaking letter, and the old register that calls the Laird's road the Old Kirk Way. You know now that in 1908, 3 men found out you can sit inside a hierarchy older than your boss and point a rifle at its messenger as if that makes you senior. It doesn't. They learned, painfully, that the beast on the road was not there for them. It was there through them. When you close this video, the Balnilin dog stays on its hill. What leaves with you is the sense that some of the roads you walk, online and off, might have their own hellhounds, less visible but just as patient. Recommendation paths. Work routines. Family patterns. They don't need to bite you straight away. They just need you to keep walking. You've got the file now. You can decide where you put your feet. This has been the Outland Archives. File 1908 SC03, Scottish Moor Hellhound Nightmare, the beast that wouldn't take bullets. If you watch through all 3 levels, you've already proved you're the sort of person who follows a road all the way to its end. Just be a little more careful about which ones you let yourself walk next. Until the next file, stay off the Old Kirk ways after dark. Keep a little iron where it counts. And if you ever hear heavy paws on a lane behind you, when there shouldn't be anything there at all, you already know how many bullets that road is willing to take.